On assumption of office, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu started with wooing foreign investors to come into Nigeria to invest. And he is also seeking to make the country attractive to these investors in a bid to revive an economy bedeviled by slow growth, rising inflation, and huge debt.
Still in Germany, President Bola Tinubu is assuring international investors that beyond Nigeria's natural resources, the people of Nigeria who are highly educated, highly skilled, and naturally industrious are the primary asset and advantage the country wields over other nations in the global race for new investments. The president spoke at a panel discussion titled Fostering Global Local Value Chains and Investments in Africa.
On these heels this morning, we are going to be talking about why no investor will come to Nigeria. I don't know how that sounds to you, but we are going to be delving into it this morning. My name is Chiamaka, and I have Mr. Tony Odukwe right here in the studio with
As
me.
always.
Good morning, Mr. Tony.
Good morning, Chiamaka. Good morning, listeners. We're excited to be here.
Yes, and like I said, today we are discussing why no investor will come to Nigeria. Mr. Tony, let me start by asking you, how did you even come up with this? What makes you think that no investor will want to come to Nigeria?
I read a lot, I research a lot, I watch the news a lot, right? And so I want to know, especially when it has to do with global news, And so I think I saw, yes. Do you really want to know how this came about?
Yes, I want to.
Like, I was discussing with my younger sister, right? And so I was telling her, about the economy and how things are going wrong, and I was trying to explain to her why, no investor would want to come to Nigeria. So as I was reeling out my points to her, she was fascinated by how true the things I was saying. It dawned on me, really, this could be a good, topic to talk about. And so that's how I decided we'll talk about it today, and I'm sure you'd love some of the points.
Okay, all right. So let's look at it. What were the points that made you to arrive to this, that no investor will want to come to Nigeria to invest?
Okay, great. So like you said, like you reiterated, Tinubu has been going around, and his cabinet going around and talking to foreign investors, talking to people in Dubai.
And we have some already, we have some contracts that he signed with Germany and some other countries.
Yeah. I was going to talk about Germany. I was going to say, he's talked to Germany, he's talked to different countries and different bodies of countries coming together with the United Nations and all of that. So he was in France the other time. And so we keep hearing news about investors coming to Nigeria, right? It makes me laugh because I understand economics, right? Now, Here is the thing, Jamaica. If you wanted to set up a business now as an individual, right? Would you rather set up a business in a community, in a low-scale community where you don't have a lot of educated people that have jobs, paying jobs, people who are struggling, or would you rather set up that shop in an upscale area where you have at least from the middle class to the top, higher class of society, higher echelon of society, where people have a spending power, which is what grows businesses. I can imagine what your answer would be.
I'm definitely going with the second option.
That's right. Because really, you're not in business as Santa Claus. You're not Father Christmas.
Yes.
You're not setting up a business.
The main idea of starting business is to make profits.
Exactly my point, So you're not setting up that business to help that community, right? Some wealthy people will do that some later in life when they've made a lot of money. Yes, they can now decide to set up things to help communities. But the primary goal of setting up a business is to make profit. And so you would put that business in a place where you stand a better chance of making more profit.
More profits.
That said, any investor has to look at a number of indices before they decide which country is the best for them to go and invest, right? Now, number one, they'll have to look at all the countries where they want to go and invest and ask themselves, why do I want to go to this country? They'll look at the natural resources that these countries have. They'll look at the skilled labor, manpower that these countries have. They'll look at access to funding, access to cash, right? Ease of withdrawal of your funds from the bank. Now, they will also look at ease of transfer of funds, right? Because one thing is to come and set up a business in a country and make profit. Now, the other thing is, am I allowed to repatriate my funds back to my country? Every serious investor from overseas would think about that, right?
Yes.
Now, I'll tell you that Nigeria is failing in that regard, but I won't go into that. Let me reel it out first. Now, the other thing they have to look at is the gross domestic product, right? That is the GDP.
The GDP.
And so the GDP is a subtotal of everything, a country's productivity, in a particular fiscal year. That gives you the GDP, right? Now, but there's another very important indices is the gross national income. The gross national income is, the sum total of all the income of the citizens of this country. That gives you the gross national income. These are very important indices. Now, the other very important one is income per capita, right? Now, every serious investor would look at all these indices to be able to help them make that decision whether or not they want to go to this country. And Nigeria is failing in all of this, right? The other indices that they may look at is the HDI, the Human Development Index. Nigeria is ranking very low on the Human Development Index. That is to say, even though we have thousands of universities and higher institutions in Nigeria, we're actually not churning out skilled labor, right? And so it makes it impossible for any investor to come here now, invest, and make profit. So you see why I'm saying no investor will come to Nigeria, because number one, you as an investor, if you dare come and set up shop in Nigeria, and if you dare make profit, you're not able to repatriate your funds. That's number one problem that will deter an investor, right? A couple of years ago, about 2-3 years ago, MTN had about 5 billion worth of, their income, and they wanted to repatriate back to South Africa, and they couldn't do it. Because you go to central bank will tell you we don't have dollars, which is, international legal tender, right? You go to these commercial banks, the commercial banks will tell you we don't have dollars, right? So that means that all the profit you've made in Nigeria is stuck in Nigeria. So who wants that? Who invests to leave their money in a foreign country? No, I'm going to another country to invest so that I can repatriate my funds and go use it for something better in my country or somewhere else, right? I had to return it to base and then make plans of what I'm going to do with it. But the inability of companies to repatriate their funds out of Nigeria is a major problem, and that's a major deterrent for investors. So that is my number one reason for saying that no investor wants to come to Nigeria. The second reason is the HDI. If you come into Nigeria, it will cost you a lot of money, to put through your staff, to put them through a training process to get them to the point where they become productive for you, right? Who wants to come and start training people who have claim you've been to the higher institution and you're educated, right? And I'm supposed to employ you on the basis of the certificate that you provide me. But then I find out that when I give you a job, you're not able to deliver on the job. So I had to start retraining you and a whole lot of others like you before you can become productive. That's a lot of capital. That's a lot of funds, going out from the company's, coffers. Investors don't want that. Now, then you come to the other part of the gross national income. Now, what is the income of the average Nigerian? Now, 30,000 naira is still official as minimum wage. Am I right?
Yes.
It's still official. Now, I've explained this on this show many times, and I'm going to explain it again. If you set up a business in Nigeria, you need Nigerians to patronize that business, be it a medical manufacturing business, be it a clothes manufacturing business, whatever it is. You need Nigerians to patronize that business. Now, no matter how Nigerians want to patronize your business, unless they earn enough money, they will never be able to patronize your business. And if they don't earn enough money and patronize your business, that business will not prosper. It will not grow. You will not make profit. That means you will lose your investment. And so right now, Nigerians are not spending because Nigerians have lost their spending power due to a number of reasons. Number one reason is high inflation. Inflation is almost at 28%. If it's not over 28%, it's kind of rising by the day. I told you the other day we've broken records here. It's inflation is at 28%.
In a bad way.
Yeah, and it's rising every day, right? So inflation is the number one reason. The other reason is that their income is stagnant, and every other thing in the marketplace is going up and going up high, and so they just can't afford to spend. And that's why I said a couple of days ago, or many times on this show, that Nigerians have learned to draw their scale of preference, what we call a scale of preference in economics, and that's a kind of call it a sheet of paper or a page in a computer where you write the most important things to the family, right? And tops on that list for Nigerians now is food, and when it comes to food, it's not every kind of food. Bread is out of there, right? It's usually gari and soup, something that will last you a couple of days or a couple of weeks, right? It's rice, and yet these things are very expensive. The minimum wage is 30,000. A bag of rice is selling for almost 60,000 naira. That is to say that Nigerians are really struggling, and so they want to eat first before they can spend money on drugs, before they can spend money on clothing, before they can spend money on cars, right? And so if you're coming to Nigeria to set up business, you're going to have to grapple with this, high cost of living and low income for Nigerians, and that means that business is already doomed, right? Now, gross GDP is important. You know why GDP is important? If Nigeria is making income, then that means we'll have a liquidity of forex. And so if we have a liquidity of forex and the company wants to repatriate their funds, then central bank can provide, funds for them, to the dollars or the euros that they need to be able to repatriate their funds. Right now, Nigeria is not making enough income. We're not selling enough crude. We're not selling enough agricultural produce. We're not selling anything in enough quantities to earn us the forex that we require, to run the economy and support those who want to send money out. So central bank is putting policies in place to ensure that people are not able to send money outside Nigeria, because the more you send money outside Nigeria, the more you drain the economy, and it becomes a chain of effect. It affects jobs, it affects income, it affects IGR and a whole lot of other stuff. So even the government itself is kicking against people sending money outside Nigeria. So how do you think an investor will come to a country where he's not able to repatriate his profit? So these are my points for saying that no investor wants to come to Nigeria. It is fact, and nobody can refute that.
Okay, so you've listed out the points. Is there a way out of this?
Yes. There are many ways out.
Can we talk about them?
Okay. Now, I didn't plan to say this, but I'm going to say this, right?
Okay.
I'm going to shake the table. I'm going to shake the table. A couple of days ago, I was driving out my compound, right, and I saw a demand notice on the wall. That Enugu State is demanding 200,000 on that property. I think they call it IGR or whatever. I don't know what they call it, but I read it. But it put me off so much that I don't even remember the details, what they called it, whatever. But I noticed that now they're placing levies on different houses and house owners, right? And you have to pay this annually. Now, what that means is that next year, most landlords are going to raise rents. So you that are listening to me right now, be prepared, to have your rent increased. I tell you, it's coming. It's going to happen from next year, right? Because Enugu State is forcing the landlords to increase, the rent. Because when they make that demand on the landlord isn't going to pay it. The landlord is going to fall back on you to give him that money to pay Enugu State government. And I don't think it's wise. I don't think it's fair that Nigerians are suffering. And instead of cushioning the effects of the economy on Nigerian families first, what the Enugu State government, the new administration, has decided to do is to actually put more burden on the citizens. So you asked, what can we do to ameliorate the situation? There are things we can do, right? I think the first thing the government can do is to make investments in, capital investments.
Expenditure.
Yes. Spend on capital projects that will create liquidity in the economy, whether in the state economy, local economy, or national economy, right? Invest in projects that will, stimulate spending. First of all, that will make money for Nigerians. That is to say, you have to create jobs. You have to set up industries fast. The quickest way to get to that point is to set up industries fast. Right? Reach out to people who can risk coming to Nigeria to invest and offer them crazy benefits, incentives. Tell them that they wouldn't have to pay tax for 10 years, right? These kinds of offers will woo investors to take the risk to come to Nigeria and see reason to invest. When we scale industries in Nigeria, in Enugu, for example, I have said this before, that the quickest way to create jobs in Enugu is not rocket science, is that everything we consume in Enugu State has to be manufactured in Enugu State, right? When I said this, your colleague Yagaze asked me, is that fair if other states decide to do that? We don't care about other states. We care about our own survival now. So Nigerian Enugu State citizens consume tea, beverages on a daily basis. They consume clothing brands, right? They eat, they drink, they take minerals and sodas and all sorts of things, butters and just name it, right? Down to toothpick, right? But you see that most of these things come from Lagos, because most manufacturers are in Western Nigeria. And so what that means is that all the earnings that citizens of Enugu State make go to Western Nigeria, right? Fattening the pockets of these big companies in the West that supply these goods. The manufacturers in Western Nigeria have to manufacture first and then supply to the distributors. Then the distributors will, ship it to the rest of Nigeria. But my problem is that all our income in Enugu is going to Lagos majorly, right? If we need to keep that income within Enugu to create jobs for our people and make lives better, we need to replace those companies with local companies that can manufacture tea. What's so difficult in manufacturing tea? What's so difficult in manufacturing beverages like chocolate drinks and milk and all of that? It's a matter of setting up a cattle ranch in Enugu, a large cattle ranch in Enugu, reap the milk from the cow, process it into powdered milk or into evaporated milk, right? It's a simple matter of getting a tea supply and making it into tea bags, right? It's as simple as finding a company that can come here and set up, textile industry that can make clothing for us, our people to wear. When we do that, the jobs stay here, our money stays here, grows the local economy, and makes sure that our people have jobs. When you have done that, then the citizen has money to spend. Every other business that comes up after that will be successful, because now you have increased, by the creation of jobs, the spending power of the local citizen. But right now, the local spending power is almost zero, because people are not earning enough. And so how do you get them to earn enough? Create industries, create jobs, right? So there are many ways that you can solve that problem. The other way you can solve that problem is the thing we've been singing on this show: export, export, export. We have comparative advantage with cashew. Make sure that you teach Enugu people, how to export cashew. Teach them how to export osensuka. Teach them how to take local raw materials, produce them into finished goods, and ship them overseas. That way, Enugu State will have, a constant flow of forex into the local economy. When you have done this and more, then you have liquidity in the state. People will have jobs. People will have income. People will spend money. Government will gain IGR. But right now, they're putting the cat before the horse. They're trying to get IGR before they've provided jobs for people. And what you're doing is that you're driving people to their deaths. And that's not right.
Okay. All right. So we've pointed out the errors and we've also profiled a solution. We hope that in the coming year, the government is going to do the necessary things in ensuring that they provide a conducive environment for investor, because for me, it's a prerequisite. It's something that you ought to do first before you start wooing them to come in. Because if they come in now, they're going to be discouraged.
Exactly.
What exactly are we coming in to come in?
Exactly. Power is another issue.
Oh yeah.
No power. I didn't even.
The challenges are numerous.
I didn't even mention that one. That's another major deterrent. What am I going there to do?
Yes.
How am I going to set up a factory if there's no steady power supply?
All right, this is still Urban Marketplace, and today we discussed why investors will not invest in Nigeria.